have an active shooter.
Let's go ahead and declare this a mass casualty.
Welcome to Active Shooter, a podcast that covers the whys, the hows, and the aftermath of active shooter and mass casualty events.
They have an active shooter in the building. A second call says they are being attacked.
I've been shot. 16910 means we got shots fired at 4:15 a.m. Route 291. Sounded like an automatic firearm.
Active shooter, reports of an active shooter,
mass casualty incidents.
Thank you for listening.
You are listening to Active Shooter, a podcast that may contain adult themes, explicit language, and graphic depictions of violence. Portions of this show may be traumatic for those under 18. Listener discretion is advised.
We are coming on the air early with breaking news. Unfortunately, another mass shooting in this country.
Yeah, a gunman opening fire inside a Walmart store in Chesapeake, Virginia overnight, killing at least 6 people.
The news is still unfolding this morning. We want to go right to NBC's Cal Perry. He is at the scene. And Cal, good morning. What is the latest you've heard?
Savannah, good morning to you. The shooting taking place about 8 hours ago. The priority from officials was to clear the Walmart behind me. They were worried that people, as they were instructed to do, would be sheltering in place. Now, at this hour, at least 7 people are confirmed dead, including the gunman. Police saying they are aware that there are reports that the gunman may have been an employee of the Walmart behind me. We are not able to confirm that as of yet.
It's an unimaginable scenario. Waking up on an ordinary Tuesday morning, going to work as you normally do, 5 to 7 days each week, and facing a kind of violence that takes your life. Or perhaps worse, having a loved one wake up on a typical Tuesday, go to work, and never return because of gun violence. So many of us are ordinary folks who live regular lives and simply cannot fathom the very real possibility of finding themselves in an active shooting. The very real possibility of losing a family member in such a dark and horrific manner. The shooting at the Chesapeake Walmart took the lives of 6 employees who never imagined that their last day alive would be at the hands of a man they interacted with day in and day out. 7 injured survivors never planned to have their entire world flipped upside down and forced to piece back the damaged parts of their souls. Countless families did not expect to be impacted by the malicious and evil actions of one man. Today's case is dedicated to the lives and memories of the 7 injured survivors, as well as the 6, Randy Blevins, Fernando Jesus Chavez Barron, Tynika Johnson, Lorenzo Gamble, Brian Pendleton, and Kelly Pyle.
Active Shooter the podcast is a High Five Holly production, and I'm your host, JT. If you've listened to our prior episodes, you know that the Active Shooter podcast team has taken the No Notoriety pledge, and we will not be sharing the real name of the shooters that we cover. We will be giving the shooters a pseudonym and refer to them by that name throughout the episode. This will help in clearing up any confusion in the story, while remaining true to our pledge and not naming the shooter by their actual name.
We will refer to today's shooter as Jeff. Around 10 p.m. on November 22nd, 2022, the Walmart Supercenter, located at 1521 Sam's Circle, Chesapeake, Virginia, was alive with activity. The third shifters were just clocking in for the night shift and expected to be especially busy with Thanksgiving, and subsequently, Black Friday mere days away. The store was still open to the public, and local shoppers from Virginia's second largest city of approximately 250,000 full-time residents were ushering in and out of the store, many of whom were likely shopping for their extensive Thanksgiving Day meals. It was a pleasant evening with temperatures in the mid to low 50s, even so late into the night. 31-year-old night shift manager Jeff entered the store at 10:12 p.m., and by all appearances seemed to be a regular guy who was showing up for a regular work shift. The unassuming 5'10" man blended in among the customers entering and exiting the store. He didn't wear the ballistics vest or other armor we have come to see so often in mass shooters. He carried a 9mm handgun with several magazines filled with ammunition. Jeff had purchased the gun that very morning and immediately went for target practice, which was confirmed when police would later discover shooting targets inside Jeff's car. Jeff headed straight towards the employee break room, which is where he always went at the start of each shift. Just moments before Jeff made it to the break room, a team lead was finishing up their nightly instructions before they were overheard saying, quote, "All right, guys, we have a late night ahead of us," before all hell broke loose.
Well, I was literally just getting to work. Our shift is from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. I got there a few minutes late. About 10:06 is when I clocked in on my phone. I walked to the break room like normal. That's where we have our nightly meeting of where everyone's going to be, stocking their particular section. And, I'm just standing there. There were a few things that seemed like off to me about that whole night that they stick out more to me now that situation has happened. Just different things, like the maintenance man, who actually the first person to end up getting hit, he actually went around the entire room and gave everyone trash bags, which he doesn't normally does, so that stuck out to me. And then when I walked in the room, something in me told me not to sit down. I don't know exactly what it was, but something just said, just stand up, and I just stood up the entire time. As soon as the team lead said he was about to get the meeting started, he said, "All right, guys, we have a really light night tonight." And as soon as he said that, the supervisor or the manager just came around the corner and literally just opened fire and just started swaying his arm back and forth. He didn't have a target. He didn't, he wasn't aiming for anybody specifically. He literally was just shooting across the entire break room.
There were about 50 people inside the Walmart and about 13 employees in the break room when the shooting started. The employees in the break room were all sitting ducks, particularly since this shooter had specific targets in mind. Plus, Jeff would have known that the employees would be gathered there in order to receive their assignments for the night. Additionally, the break room is where employees punch in and out, and as the name implies, employees often took breaks in that room. So the in and out activity was frequent. As soon as he arrived at the break room, Jeff opened fire, shooting the weapon first at Brian Pendleton, a coworker that he targeted. Though the reason he intensely disliked the other man enough to murder him in cold blood is both unclear and utterly inexplicable. Evidently, in early 2022, Jeff attempted to get Brian fired. However, the reason for the firing's not clear. Brian was subsequently terminated from employment, which left him feeling puzzled. Brian had been a long-time employee, and it doesn't seem that any concrete reason was ever provided to him. Without thinking twice, Brian called his former supervisor and asked for his job back, which was granted, and Brian was back to work in no time. Brian, who was only 38 at the time, was murdered. Suffered from a brain condition called congenital hydrocephalus, which is a buildup of fluid on the brain, and some people with this condition can become medically disabled. Brian was employed at Walmart and had just celebrated his 10-year anniversary. He was proud of his work history with the company, which also consisted of a custodial position at one point. Brian was a model employee who was never late and rarely missed shifts. A lifelong Chesapeake resident, he loved his family and telling jokes and was simply a joyful person, which made it all the more strange that Jeff despised him so. In fact, Brian's mother later reported that Jeff never liked her son, though they never fully understood why. Her son was a wonderful, hard-working man, and the heartbroken mother will never live the same after burying her child adult or not. Some witnesses would later report that Jeff didn't say anything during the shooting. Others reported that Jeff laughed through the whole ordeal, which is beyond disturbing and unsettling. Petrified employees and customers alike began fleeing, running and hiding anywhere they might seek shelter. 16-year-old Fernando Jesus Chavez Barron, the youngest of the shooting victims, was born on December 24th, 2005, in Charlottesville, Virginia. The teen, who was so eager for the responsibility of his first job, was an affectionate and considerate young man. So much so that Jesus used the earnings from his very first paycheck to buy a gift for his mom, which makes the senseless loss of this promising youngster so devastating. Jesus was a junior at Oscar Smith High School, where he was an honor roll student, which was only one of his already impressive accomplishments. He'd achieved much in his short life, and his light was extinguished much too soon. Jeff continued his pursuit of coworkers he viciously deemed unworthy of life when he shot and killed 70-year-old Randy Blevins. Born in Chesapeake on September 20th, 1952, Randy was the eldest of the shooting victims, but it is not clear if he was specifically targeted like several other employees. He was a longtime employee of Walmart, 30 years long, to be exact. Randy and his wife owned a Ben Franklin craft store before he went to work for the corporate giant. Randy was dedicated, both to his job and his family. He would do anything for his beloved wife, Teresa, who he considered his very best friend. A loyal Norfolk Admirals hockey team fan, he was happiest watching a game and attending professional wrestling events. Randy was an incredibly loyal man who leaves behind his soulmate, Teresa, 3 stepdaughters, and 4 brothers, who will never be the same without him. Some employees say that Jeff was purposely hunting for certain coworkers, and would even continue shooting at those victims unnecessarily. But he wanted to ensure their deaths and went to disgusting lengths to do so. A coworker named Jessica Wilczewski had only begun working for Walmart about 5 days earlier. The young woman was shaking uncontrollably, hiding underneath a table when Jeff saw her and demanded she get out from under it. He took a closer look, seeing that Jessica wasn't who he was searching for, before ordering her to leave the store and go home. She very carefully stood, exited the room, and ran as fast as she could from the store. The terror and trauma that this survivor must still be coping with is beyond anything one could imagine. Lorenzo Gamble was a valued, long-standing Walmart employee of 15 years. The 43-year-old was born in Brooklyn, New York, on August 30th, 1979. He graduated as an honor student from Great Ridge High School in 1998. Lorenzo, also known to friends and family as Zoe, loved football. He loved to watch and talk about the sport, and he even played fullback for a local recreational team called the Redskins, in addition to being a massive Washington Commanders fan. He typically worked the overnight shift as a custodian. Family was what Lorenzo loved, and would do anything for. His wife, Shayla Monique Dolberry Gamble, and 2 sons were quite literally his entire world, and theirs must feel empty without him now. Lorenzo is also survived by 3 brothers and a sister. It's unclear whether Lorenzo was an intended target, but the loss is no less excruciating. Shoppers that didn't make it outside of the store hid anywhere they could reasonably be concealed. One witness claimed she saw smoke exiting the firearm before seeing bodies drop to the ground. It was surreal, seeing and hearing the chaos all around. Yet, the moments probably felt like slow motion, and distant in a detached sort of way. The mind can do astonishing things when fight, flight, or freeze takes over. After the shooting in the break room, Jeff stalked the aisleways, shooting at random. He fired another 10 shots outside of the break room and murdered 52-year-old Kelly Pyle. Born on August 29, 1970, and raised in Norfolk, Virginia, Kelly was recently returned to the Chesapeake area. She had been living in Kentucky when she found her old high school flame, Brian Baker, on Facebook. The couple rekindled their flame, so Kelly moved back to Virginia and they planned to marry in 2023. Kelly had 2 adult children and a granddaughter, and they were her reasons for living. Kelly was a giver and nurturer, and indeed, she'd been caring for her elderly parents as their health began to decline, and she was even the caregiver for her brother after he suffered a stroke. Such a kind-hearted and giving individual is so rare these days, and her family's loss has likely been the most difficult to bear. Each of the 6 shooting victims were Walmart employees. 2 were shot and killed in the break room, while 3 others were shot in unknown locations in the store. Those 3 were rushed to the hospital, but later died as a result of their gunshot wounds. 5 patients were rushed to Centera Norfolk General Hospital, which is the area's closest Level 1 trauma center. 2 of the patients later passed away, while 2 were listed in critical condition, and the 5th, 24-year-old Jalen Jones, was shot and was placed on a ventilator, but he was eventually listed as being in fair condition and ultimately was released. 5 other shooting victims were rushed to the Chesapeake General Hospital, where 1 patient passed from their injuries, and the other 4 mercifully were treated and released. The mental anguish and trauma that those survivors live with each and every day is like a massive weight, and it is our deepest wish that they find some peace and a sense of normalcy again. One victim, presumed to be 22-year-old Tynika Johnson, was found near the front of the store where she had been murdered. Tynika was born on November 1st, 2000, and attended Western Branch High School. An absolutely stunning young woman, Tynika was a light in every room she entered. Benevolent and dedicated to learning, Tynika dreamed of furthering her education and her family, who was her whole world, and has truly been robbed of her presence. Jeff was seemingly finished with his rampage after the last bullets were fired inside the store. He returned to the employee break room and further desecrated the space by turning the weapon on himself. Jeff died of a single gunshot wound. The shooting was over, but the damage was far from done. Because the Walmart superstore is so massive, it took police nearly 40 minutes to thoroughly search the entire building. The police response was extremely quick. The shooting began at 10:12 p.m., and police were on the scene by 10:14. The Chesapeake Police, Virginia Beach Police, and an FBI agent responded to the scene, and the ATF in Washington, D.C. later assisted in the investigation. The scene at Walmart was declared secure approximately an hour after the first 911 call. A reunification center was established at the Chesapeake Conference Center for employees and their families and friends. By 5 a.m., about 50 people had gathered at the conference center. The day following the shooting, November 23rd, police and ATF agents searched Jeff's house in the Ava Gardens section of Crestwood, Virginia. The 2-story, tan home stood in a relatively quiet neighborhood. However, the front door of the home had been smashed in. Police found a box of ammunition, the box the gun was purchased in, a receipt, and other miscellaneous paperwork. It should be noted that in September 2019, after the El Paso Walmart shooting, which we covered back in episode 2, the store chose to discontinue sales of a certain type of ammunition, including .223 caliber and 5.56 caliber ammo, handgun ammunition, and short barrel rifle ammo. In the mid-90s, Walmart ceased selling handguns in every state, except Alaska, which ceased handgun sales in 2019. Several hunters in rural areas depend on local Walmart stores for purchasing hunting rifles and ammunition, and as such, sales have not discontinued in most areas, though some Walmart locations do not sell any types of firearms. Jeff was born on May 1st, 1991, and was a lifelong resident of Chesapeake. He was transient for many years, moving to cities in Virginia including Norfolk, Suffolk, and Virginia Beach, as well as Queens, New York, and San Angelo, Texas. He was employed with the Walmart superstore since 2010 and had as long of standing with the company as many of his murdered coworkers. Employees say that Jeff was short with them and was known to be antagonistic. He frequently made comments to coworkers that work was draining him and complained about not having a social life. It wasn't a complete fabrication. Jeff had no social media presence or online activity, which so many people his age do. He didn't get on with most anyone he worked with, although at least one employee reported that Jeff made people laugh and enjoyed dancing. Jeff was honest about his anger issues, and it seemed to carry over into his work life consistently. He wrote employees up for minuscule reasons, and didn't seem to really like people, which makes it questionable as to how he maintained a job working closely with others and the public for so long. In 2019, Jeff bought his 3-bedroom home, and neighbors reported that Jeff kept quiet to himself, and he rarely interacted with anyone in the neighborhood. He was mostly only noticed if he was mowing the lawn. Despite his quick temper, Jeff had no criminal record or apparent arrests. While employees claimed that they believed Jeff was a little paranoid, they didn't think he was capable of violence, certainly not the kind he unleashed on November 22nd. Jeff believed the government was watching him, so he placed tape over the camera on his phone. He was almost fearful of being caught on camera, or noticed in some major way. One employee described a time that she was making a video of another coworker, and while she was recording, Jeff was captured in the peripheral of the lens, and he immediately jumped out of the way. Though he appeared on the surface to be an attentive, good worker, Jeff had been written up at least twice by his supervisors, though the reasons for the write-ups aren't known. Jeff was quick to gossip about employees to other employees, which almost always leads to drama of some sort. Drama that should never be perpetrated by a supervising employee. One employee that was interviewed later indicated that employees often made fun of Jeff, picking on his hair or clothing. They commented on his lack of social life and how he only seemed to work and play video games. One employee expressed concern that Jeff never appeared to have a network or support system from his family or close friends, which seems true considering he confided in employees that he wasn't even close to, that he had a bad temper. He never talked about or to any family while working, and he never talked about what he did over the weekend or made that type of small talk that longtime coworkers often do. Concerningly, one employee claimed that Jeff previously stated that if he were to ever be fired, he would come back and kill people. It was the first, or perhaps the brightest red flag that Jeff displayed. While he didn't leave many signs of obviously planning this shooting for a long time, Jeff had clearly given it some thought, for there was a manifesto located on his cell phone, which detailed harassment he felt at work and how he believed that management was planning to terminate his employment. Names in the manifesto have been redacted by the investigating agency and states, titled Death Note.
Sorry, God, I've failed you. This was not your fault but my own. I failed to listen to the groans of the Holy Spirit, which made me a poor representation of you. I was harassed by idiots with low intelligence and a lack of wisdom. I remained strong through most of the torment, but my dignity was completely taken away, beyond repair, by my phone getting hacked. I can't say that they were the only ones that lacked intelligence and wisdom. I was just as guilty, and failed my management team and everyone that ever loved me by convincing them that I was normal. And the associates orchestrated it. They laughed and made subtle code speeches, which I eventually figured out. I thought was my friend, but he betrayed me. Betrayal is one of the worst feelings, next to regret. They laughed at me and said that I was like Jeffrey Dahmer. I would have never killed anyone that entered my home. A few months back, I had overheard talking to and he told me that he had been trying to get rid of me since day one. After I heard that, I lashed out. The associates gave me evil, twisted grins, mocked me, and celebrated my downfall the last day. That's why they suffer the same fate as me. From maintenance was a manting with the Holy Spirit, which I could feel. People thought that she was crazy for walking out, but unlike me, she actually listened to the Holy Spirit, knew they were antagonizing me. So one day, she approached me in personnel and apologized to me. On her last day, she looked me in the eyes, terrified by a demonic aura. My true intent was never to murder anyone, believe it or not. I was actually one of the most loving people in the world if you would get to know me. I just wanted a wife that was equally yoked as I, and obsessed over the thought. However, I didn't deserve a wife. I hope that people will learn from everyone's mistakes and truly love God and not the material possessions of the world. My only wish would have been to start over from scratch, and that my parents would have paid closer attention to my social deficits. Sorry, everyone, but I did not plan this. I promise things just fell in place like I was led by Satan. I have written songs in the past, though. I only did it when I realized that my phone was hacked and was giving the worst feeling imaginable. I wish that I could have saved everyone from myself. I will spare because I have a special place for her in my heart, because my mother died from cancer. Please, let everyone know that bitter seed apricots are the cure for cancer, and not the doctor. My God, forgive me for what I do.
Several Walmart employees filed lawsuits against the company, stating that they warned management about the shooter and issues that they were having, including one who claimed to have filed a complaint with supervisors about the shooter, who was the employee's direct supervisor. The employee said that the shooter was harassing him and displayed intimidating behaviors. The employee said that the shooter told him, quote, "I don't care how big you are. I have something to take care of that." Walmart allegedly failed to investigate or take action. Another employee filed suit saying that her mom reported the shooter to upper management because her daughter was scared of the shooter. Again, no action was taken. Walmart reopened on April 19th, 2023, or about 5 months post-shooting. The store underwent substantial changes in design, and an outdoor memorial was erected to honor the victims, and hopefully provide a place of comfort rather than hurt and pain. The area will include local foliage, and will include 6 sitting structures, one for each shooting victim. The store has been described as the, quote, store of the future, and will have interactive features, as well as displays meant to engage customers and create a more immersive shopping experience. We all have the unique ability to help prevent such a catastrophic event from happening, if we keep our eyes and ears open, and never hesitate to report when something or someone just doesn't seem right. With the delicate balance of mental health reform, education, active shooter training, and common sense gun laws, we may one day realize the dream that there will be no more active shootings. We pray that love will prevail over hate.
Too many have died! We should say to ourselves, not one more!
In the meantime, we urge our listeners to stay aware of your surroundings and keep in touch with your loved ones. If you see something, say something. You never know how many lives you'll be saving. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Active Shooter, the podcast. Remember, if you see something, say something. There's no telling how many lives you may be saving. A big thank you to Darren Curtis, who composed some of the songs on our show. You can find him online at www.darrencurtismusic.com. Make sure to check us out on social media. You can find us on Facebook at Active Shooter, the podcast, and on Twitter at Podcast Active. Thank you, and be safe.